So to make this two-layer baked ziti, these are all the ingredients that you'll need. Milk, salt, ricotta cheese, goat cheese, cheddar cheese, mozzarella cheese, butter, flour, seasoning salt, mushrooms, a red onion, cilantro, a jarred marinara of your choice. I'm using puttanesca sauce, and dry pasta. I'm using ziti. So the first step is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, so that way it will be ready when we need it. So to start prepping for the first layer of the layered baked ziti, we have to first wash the mushrooms. So all I'm taking here is about 3/4 of a package of cremini mushrooms. You can use any mushrooms you want. I just like cremini, so I'm using them. So all I'm doing now is just washing the mushrooms and taking off the tough part, the stem of the mushrooms, and discarding that. So now we have the dried mushrooms here that I'm showing you, and after I wash them, I just set them on the counter or in the sink and I let them dry for a couple of minutes. Now some people are under the impression not to wash mushrooms, but I found that in my experience that it works perfectly fine. And I know Alton Brown from Good Eats did a whole study on it once, and he found that they don't absorb so much water that it makes such a big difference. So I just choose to wash them just to be safe. So here I have the washed mushrooms, and now I'm just going to let them dry. So basically, after we finish washing the mushrooms, all we're going to do now is cut them up in bite-sized pieces. So here you see I am chopping up the mushrooms in small pieces that we're then going to take and throw in the frying pan with a little bit of oil and saute them up. So mushrooms come in different sizes, so try your best to get them around the same size. And overall, I think I have about a cup of mushrooms here. So depending if your family likes a lot of mushrooms, add in the whole cup. And if they don't like a lot of mushrooms, then add in only a half a cup. So anywhere from a half a cup to a cup of mushrooms would suffice. And now we're just going to place them back in a colander, as you can see, and move on to the next step. So now, after we finish chopping the mushrooms, we're just going to grab a red onion and we're just going to dice it and pretty small pieces, and we're just going to set that aside with our mushrooms and we're going to fry it. So here we have our chopped onion. It's about 1/3 of a cup of red onion. So here's our onion and here's our mushroom, and then we're just going to saute that up in this pan. So we're going to set a pan on medium heat. We're going to add in some olive oil. I'm going to add in the mushrooms. Sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but it's going to focus itself out in a few seconds. We're going to add in some salt, and we're going to add in some freshly cracked black pepper. And then we're just going to let the mushrooms sweat out all that moisture and let them get nice and brown. So that's going to take anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, and then we will proceed to add in our onions. After a few minutes, make sure to toss the mushrooms around with a spoon just to make sure that they get evenly brown and don't burn. So while the mushrooms are cooking, I'm just going to fill up a large pot with water and put it on the stove and wait till it boils. This is going to be for our pasta. So I'm going to put a lid on it and let it boil, and then we're going to come back to it. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the mushrooms. So now, as you just saw, all the mushrooms have excreted their water, and so after they let out all their juices, we're going to add in the red onion. So I'm adding here 1/3 of a cup of chopped red onion that we chopped earlier, and we're going to add that in and let that cook for about 5 minutes to get them really broken down and nice and sweet. And by the time the red onions finish cooking, all the water will be gone and the mushrooms will be nice and juicy and almost crisp, I want to say. So nicely brown, that's what I mean to say. And now after we added in the onions, we're just gonna season it with some seasoning salt. And we're just gonna add in some seasoning salt and then just wait till it cooks. So this is what the mushroom and onion mixture looks like after a few minutes. As you can see, all the water has evaporated and the mushrooms are nice and brown and the onions are beautifully softly cooked. So now we're just gonna take those mushrooms off the heat and put them in a bowl and set them aside to cool. This is going to be for our first layer for the white sauce, and it's gonna add some really great depth. So we're just gonna set that aside and work on the rest of the ingredients we need for the rest of the baked ziti. So now we're just gonna chop up some cilantro. This is also gonna be for the white sauce portion of the ziti recipe. And we're just gonna chop it up really finely so that way it can disperse throughout the sauce. And here is the final product, as you see. Now we're gonna grate up some cheese. This is a pound of mozzarella cheese, and this goes in the white sauce as well as in the red sauce and on top of the ziti. And now this, we're gonna grate half a cup of sharp cheddar cheese, and this is gonna go in our red sauce. So these are the final two cheeses, and now we're just gonna set that aside and move on to our pasta. Now I'm just gonna boil up a pound of penne ricotta. You can use ziti, whatever you want, and making sure to stir it throughout the cooking process. And we're just gonna cook this a little bit shy of al dente, so that's around 7 to 8 minutes. As you can see, we're draining it here, and that way it's gonna continue cooking in the sauces in the oven, so we don't want it to get overcooked. So now we're just gonna drain that and set that aside. Now we're gonna work on the first layer, which is the white sauce. So as you can see, I'm grabbing a pan and I'm gonna put about a tablespoon of butter in it and then a tablespoon of flour, and I'm just gonna cook that on low heat until the butter and the flour cooks for about 2 minutes. As you can see, that's after about a minute of cooking, and right before it starts to turn golden brown. As you can see right here, it's already starting to turn a little bit brown. This is when I grab my milk. So here I'm adding a cup of milk. Now, in retrospect, I would have added a full 2 cups of milk, but I didn't have enough milk in my house, so I only added a cup. And as you can see later on, I'm gonna compensate with that using heavy cream. But if you have enough milk in your house, add in the full 2 cups and then ignore the heavy cream step, which I'm gonna show later on. So now we're gonna let this cook for a good 5 to 6 minutes until it thickens up. And as you can see now, it's beautifully thickened. I'm going to season it with a little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt, and then a little bit of nutmeg. So here it is, bubbling, thickening away. And now I'm going to reach for the nutmeg. And sorry, this shot's a little bit blurry, but I'll try to do better next time. So just a hint of nutmeg, and then it should be ready. One final stir, and you know the sauce is ready is that when it coats the back of a wooden spoon and you run your finger through it and it stays, like I'm about to do now, then you know the sauce is ready. You see, it's not moving, it just stayed on the spoon. So now we're gonna assemble the first sauce. So we're gonna grab our mushrooms that we let cool off earlier. We're gonna add in our sauce. First, actually, we're gonna add in our pasta. So since there are 2 different sauces, so you're gonna put half the ziti, half the pasta, I'm sorry, this is penne ricotta, half of it in one bowl, and then the other half you're going to put in another bowl. So now to the bowl with the mushrooms, you have half a pound of cooked pasta, and you have your creamy bechamel sauce that you just made. You're going to add in the cilantro that we prepped earlier, and since the sauce was looking a little bit dry because I didn't have enough milk, I compensated with about 1/4 of a cup of heavy cream, and I added later on if it was looking a little bit dry. So in total it was 1/4 of a cup of heavy cream, and it turned out perfect. But once again, if you want it a little bit less richer, then go ahead and add in the 2 full cups of milk when you're making the initial sauce. So now here I have some herb goat cheese, which I find gives amazing, great flavor. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons, not too much because it is very strong and potent. So we're gonna mix that all up, and now we're gonna set that aside and start on our second sauce. So now to make the second layer of the ziti, we're going to start off by putting in the cooked pasta that we reserved before. We're going to put in the whole entire jar of any marinara sauce you want. I'm using puttanesca sauce. And we're going to mix that all around. Then we're going to reach for our ricotta. We're going to add in a cup of ricotta. And if you like more ricotta, you can add more, a cup and a half. If you like less, you can add a cup. I think I ended up adding a little bit over a cup. And we're just going to mix that all up. So after we mix that thoroughly, we're going to add in a half a cup of grated mozzarella cheese that we grated earlier, and the half a cup of grated sharp cheddar cheese that we grated earlier. And then we're just going to season it with seasoning salt instead of plain salt, and it just adds more flavor. But it's really salty, so don't add additional salt. And we're going to season it with ground fresh black pepper and mix that all up. And now I just want you to hear like how creamy it is, so I'm just going to stop talking and let you listen. So that sound was absolutely glorious. I don't know, I just love it, how it sounds so creamy and amazing. So now that we recovered from that, at least I recovered from that, I'm going to start layering the ziti. So here I have a 9 by 13 glass Pyrex dish. You really can make it in any type of dish you want to, but I have this, so I'm going to use this. And I sprayed it down with a little bit of non-stick cooking spray. And here I'm layering my first ziti layer. So this is the white ziti we made earlier with the mushroom, the goat cheese, the mushroom, the goat cheese, the cilantro, and the mozzarella cheese with the bechamel sauce we made. And I'm just gonna top it in between layers with a little bit of extra mozzarella cheese I had laying on. I guess you don't have to do that. The reason I put down the white sauce first is, like I said earlier, I ran out of milk, so it came out a little bit drier than I wanted. So I wanted the more creamier layer to be on top, so then some of that sauce can penetrate the bottom layer and make it more moist. But you can do any layer you like. And then on top of that, I topped it off with our second ziti layer, which is the sauce we made with the tomato, ricotta, and cheddar cheese. And try to make it as smooth as possible, and for it to have an even surface. So I flattened it out with the back of my spoon. And now I'm just going to add in the remaining 1 cup of cheese that we have left over. So half a cup we used in the white sauce, and the other half a cup we used in the red sauce. So the remaining 1 cup I'm gonna top all over the ziti, and here I'm just gonna get a nice even distribution. Looking back on it now, I feel like I would add a little bit more cheese because my family just personally likes a lot of cheese on top, but you can go with however much you want. So here I'm just fixing up the layers, trying to get it nice and even. And then you're gonna put this into your 350-degree oven that we preheated in the beginning. So after 45 minutes in a 350-degree oven, this is what your ziti should look like. As you can see that the sides or the corners are bubbling, and the top is beautifully melted, and some bits, mainly around the edges, are nicely brown, and it just looks amazing. So you're gonna take that out and let it cool for about 10 minutes, but me being me, I couldn't wait. So after 5 minutes, I just dove right in. And as you saw earlier, I was just trying to show you the layers, how the bottom layer is like nice and white and the top layer is red, nice and creamy. So serve yourself up a slice like I did here and enjoy. This feeds a huge crowd, and it's really filling, excuse the blurry shots. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Rate, comment, and subscribe, and have a great day.